My phone didn't ring all day, not one call. Not a single text message. The screen stayed dark, a black mirror reflecting the empty room. It was my 28th birthday. By 9 p.m., the silence in my tiny apartment was screaming. On the coffee table, a single grocery store cupcake sat in its plastic shell. The candle was still in the box. I kept telling myself to light it, but a childish voice in my head whispered, "Wait, maybe they were just running late. Maybe it was a surprise." But I knew better. They'd skipped my 27th for my brother's last-minute trip. They'd forgotten my 25th entirely. Hope was a habit I needed to break. Just as my thumb hovered over the power button to turn off my phone, my laptop pinged. The sound cut through the quiet. It wasn't a birthday wish. It was an email from work. The subject line was cold, corporate. Project Hawthorne, bonus confirmation. My breath hitched. For 6 months, I had lived inside that project. I poured my nights, my weekends, my sanity into it, saving the firm a 7-figure account that everyone else had given up on. I opened the PDF. The number stared back at me from the screen. It was clean. It was huge. It was enough to change a life. My life. For a long time, I just sat there. I looked at the number on the screen. Then I looked at the lonely cupcake on the table. And something inside me just snapped. A wire that had been stretched taut for 28 years, pulled by 1,000 little disappointments, finally broke. The sadness vanished. In its place was a strange, cold calm. A dangerous kind of clarity. I opened a new tab. A real estate website I'd looked at for months. My own private little fantasy. And there it was. The small 2-bedroom cottage on Heron Lake. The one with the big oak tree and the worn-out dock. My bonus covered the down payment. Every single dollar. I didn't think. I just acted. I clicked the button. I made the call. 2 hours later, after a blurry virtual tour and a swift digital signature, the house was mine. I took a screenshot of the listing photo, the little blue house sitting by the calm water. I opened my social media, my fingers moving on their own. I didn't tag a single person. My caption was 7 words. Happy birthday to me. New beginnings. I hit post. My phone, dead for an entire day, suddenly convulsed. It buzzed against the wood of the table, a furious, angry sound. The screen lit up. "Mom," I answered, my hand trembling just a little. I didn't even have time to say hello. "What have you done?" Her voice was like ice shards down the line. "You are airing our family business for the entire world to see. This is the most selfish, ungrateful thing you have ever done." I waited. I waited for her to ask if I was okay. To ask why. She didn't. "You take that picture down," she commanded. "Right now?" I looked at the picture on my laptop. My little house. My escape. My future. "No," I said. The word was quiet, but it felt like the loudest thing I had ever said in my entire life. The line went dead. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't empty anymore. It was the start of a war. The rage in my mother's voice was an old, familiar storm. It echoed down the years, pulling up memories I'd tried to bury. Suddenly, I was 16 again. My parents told me money was too tight for a party. I understood. I never asked for much. They gave me a small silver locket in a cheap jewelry box. It felt hollow, even then. A week later, our backyard was full of people. Balloons were tied to every tree. A massive barbecue pit smoked in the center of the lawn. It was a surprise party. For my brother Liam. He'd just passed his driver's test. My father's voice boomed across the yard, "Anything for my boy." As he handed Liam the keys to a car, I stood by the punch bowl, my fingers tracing the outline of the cheap locket around my neck. I had never felt more invisible. The memory dissolved, replaced by a fresher wound. My 27th birthday, just last year. They'd promised me dinner. Just the 3 of us. An hour before, my dad called. His voice was rushed. "Sorry, sweetie. Liam's new girlfriend got a flat tire an hour away. We've got to go help. We'll reschedule." They never did. 2 days later, I saw the pictures on social media. Liam and his girlfriend, grinning at a beachside restaurant, holding up massive lobster tails. The caption read, "Best parents ever." There was no flat tire. There was just a lie. My work became my only refuge. As an architectural assistant, I found a quiet satisfaction in things that made sense. Blueprints, load-bearing walls, stable foundations. The Hawthorne project was my chance. I found a tiny flaw in a zoning application, a detail that would have cost the firm millions. My boss noticed. He saw my value. The bonus wasn't a gift. It was earned. This lake house. It was the first foundation I was building just for me. I was taping up a box of old photos when I heard the metallic slide of mail coming through the door slot. I figured it was junk mail, maybe a final utility bill. But one envelope was different. It was crisp, heavy, made of expensive paper. A red stamp screamed urgent. It was from my old apartment's homeowners association. I hadn't lived there in 6 months. My hands trembled as I tore it open. My eyes jumped past the legal jargon, landing on a single, horrifying number. A $1,500 fine. The reason? Unapproved perennial plantings. The flowers. The little flower bed I'd spent a whole spring cultivating by my old front door. The same flowers the HOA president had once told me were lovely. The notice gave me 14 days to pay. 14 days before they sent it to collections. My savings were gone. The bonus was already locked in for the house. I had nothing. It felt like the world was squeezing me from all sides, testing to see if I would finally break. I sank onto a half-packed moving box, the threatening letter in one hand. My fingers, searching for something to hold, found the tarnished silver locket in the other. They were right all along. I was completely and utterly on my own. My brother Liam called the next morning. His name flashed on the screen, and for a second my heart leaped. Maybe he was on my side. Maybe he understood. It was a foolish hope. His voice was a warm, syrupy blanket of concern. The classic good cop routine. "Hey, Em. Wow, I saw your post. A lake house? That's a big move?" I stayed silent. I knew what was coming next. "Listen," he said, letting out a long, dramatic sigh. "Mom's really spun up. You know how she gets. She just thinks you should have talked to them first. Making a huge financial decision like that, all alone. It's just not smart, you know?" The condescension dripped from every word. "My money, Liam. I earned it." The words burned in my throat, but I swallowed them. "I'm an adult," I said, my voice tight. It was a sound investment. The bonus was mine. I know, he said, his voice dropping into a conspiratorial whisper. "But it looks bad. It looks like you're trying to cut us out, like you're being selfish." There it was. The family's favorite word for me. A softer echo of my mother's rage, but the same poison. "She wants you to apologize," Liam said, his voice now gentle, pleading. "Just call her. Tell her you got carried away. Smooth it all over. The old me would have caved. The old me would have choked down my own pride just to make the yelling stop, just to restore their precious peace." But I could see the signed purchase agreement sitting on my kitchen counter. A promise I had made to myself. "No, Liam." The words were quiet, but they felt heavy. "I'm not apologizing for spending my own money on my own birthday." He was silent. I could practically hear him recalibrating. "So you're choosing a house over your family, Em? Is that what this is?" "No," I said, and this time my voice didn't shake. "I'm choosing me." I hung up the phone before he could reply. My hands were trembling, but my back was straight. My spine felt like it was forged from new steel. A moment later, my phone started buzzing relentlessly. The family group chat. My aunt sent a string of praying hands emojis. My uncle posted a link to an article titled, "When a loved one's behavior becomes erratic." I muted the conversation. My mind was a hornet's nest. I needed to focus on something real, something solid. The house. I dug through my purse and found the business card for the real estate agent, Carol. A crisp white card with a simple, elegant logo. I called her. We went over the closing timeline, the paperwork, the logistics. Her voice was professional, efficient, a calm port in my emotional storm. When we finished, she didn't hang up. There was a pause. "Sorry if I'm overstepping," she said, her tone suddenly warm. "Human. But when you sent your proof of funds, I saw the memo line on that bonus. Project Hawthorne. My husband's on the board of that company. He said a junior associate basically saved them from a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. That was you, wasn't it?" The air left my lungs. "It was," I whispered. Kid, you didn't just get lucky. You earned every single cent of that down payment. Another pause. You sound pretty stressed. Is everything okay? And just like that, the dam broke. The whole story poured out of me. The forgotten birthday. The vicious phone call. My brother's manipulation. I didn't mean to tell her. A practical stranger. It just happened. When I finished, the line was quiet. I braced myself for a polite professional exit. Instead, Carol asked a simple question. A question that shattered everything. Why do you think their comfort is more important than your happiness? Carol's question echoed in the silence of my apartment long after the call ended. Why do you think their comfort is more important than your happiness? I had no answer. That evening, the next wave of the storm hit. This time, it wasn't a raging phone call. It was colder, more calculated, and it was public. An email notification popped up on my laptop screen. It was from my mother. The subject line was a flashing red warning light, designed for maximum drama. An urgent and heartbreaking update on our family. My blood ran cold. She hadn't just sent it to me. She'd sent it to everyone. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years, even my godparents. I opened it. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. She never raised her voice. Instead, she wept onto the page. She wrote that I was a troubled, impulsive person who had fallen into a deep and sudden depression. She claimed my career had changed me, twisting my ambition into an obsession with money. She warped my hard-earned bonus into family money I should have offered up, hinting that my brother Liam desperately needed help with a down payment on a house of his own. The lake house was my cry for help. An extravagant, reckless purchase from someone who was clearly not well. My refusal to speak with her was offered as the ultimate proof of my instability. The final paragraph was the killer. We ask for your prayers and support, she wrote, as we navigate this difficult time and try to get our daughter the help she so desperately needs. It was brilliant. She wasn't the aggressor. She was the concerned mother, grieving for her lost child. I was no longer an adult who had made a choice. I was a charity case. A problem the entire family now had to solve. My phone, which had been quiet, began to buzz. Then it buzzed again. And again, a relentless flood of texts from the family jury. Thinking of you, Emily. Your mom is so worried. Please call your parents. Don't push away the people who love you most. I had no idea you were struggling this much. We are all here for you. They weren't messages for me. They were messages for the character my mother had created. The unhinged, ungrateful daughter. I was completely cornered. She was winning. She had taken my story and rewritten it, and everyone believed her version. For a terrifying minute, I almost believed her too. Was I selfish? Was this all a horrible mistake? The weight of their judgment felt like a physical thing, pressing down on my chest. I sat on the floor, surrounded by half-packed boxes, completely and utterly alone. I could write back. I could send my own mass email, defending myself. But my words against hers would just be more drama, more fuel for her fire. Carol's question came back to me, a whisper in the storm. Why is their comfort more important than your happiness? I picked up my phone, my thumb hovering over my email app. But I didn't open it. I closed my eyes, took a breath, and opened a web browser instead. I didn't type a response. I typed a search, setting boundaries with toxic family members. I wasn't going to fight fire with fire. I was going to learn how to build a firewall. My first online therapy session felt like opening a pressure valve on a machine that was about to explode. The therapist listened without judgment. And when I was done, she gave me a single life-altering piece of advice. Respond with facts, not feelings, she said. Emotion is their battlefield. Data is yours. That sentence became my new religion. First things first. The HOA fine. The 14-day deadline was a ticking clock in the back of my mind. I called Carol, my real estate agent, to thank her for her kindness. When I mentioned the fine, I heard her click her tongue over the phone. That board is notorious, she said. My nephew's a paralegal. He loves fighting bullies like them. Let me make a call. 2 days later, an official letter arrived from the paralegal's office. It cited the HOA's own bylaws, chapter and verse. It mentioned a state statute about arbitrary enforcement. The next day, I got an email. The fine was dropped. Just like that. It was the first domino to fall in my favor. And it gave me an idea. I turned my attention to my mother's email, the performance of her victimhood, her claims that they'd always supported me. I needed data. I bought a simple manila folder. It was empty and light. I spent an entire weekend hunched over my laptop, the screen glowing in my dark apartment. I pulled years of online banking records. I started a spreadsheet. My transfers to Liam highlighted in yellow. $300 for his car insurance. $500 for a security deposit. $200 for concert tickets. It added up to thousands of dollars I'd never see again. Then, I searched for transfers from my parents. To me, a handful of $50 birthday checks from my childhood. To Liam, it was a steady stream. And then I found it. The big one. A $5,000 transfer from 2 years ago. The memo line was clear as day. Liam car down payment. The loan my father had told me came from a friend. I clicked print. The page slid out of the printer, warm and solid. I placed it in the manila folder. On Monday, my boss, Mr. Davison, called me into his office. He didn't mention my personal life, but his eyes were kind. I knew he'd heard the corporate gossip. He slid a contract across the desk. "Emily," he said, "you've proven you can handle extreme pressure with focus. I'm giving you the lead on the new municipal library pitch. It's a smaller project, but it's all yours." It was more than a contract. It was a lifeline, a reminder that in the world outside my family, my skills had value. The manila folder on my desk seemed to call to me that night. I remembered something else. My high school graduation party. My grandmother whispering that she'd paid for it because my parents were a little tight on money. On a wild hunch, I called the restaurant. The manager was the same man from all those years ago. He remembered my grandmother. "Let me check the digital archives," he said. 10 minutes later, an email pinged in my inbox. It was the invoice. Paid in full. By my grandmother's credit card. I printed it. It went into the folder. That evening, my phone rang. An unknown number. I answered. It was my father. His voice was calm. "Practiced. Rehearsed?" "Emily," he said smoothly. "Your mother and I, we want to put all this behind us. Let's have a nice family dinner. Saturday night, at the Gilded Spoon. Just us. We just want to talk." The Gilded Spoon. Their favorite spot. The place they took Liam to celebrate his promotions. It wasn't an olive branch. It was an ambush. "Okay, Dad," I said, my voice perfectly even. "I'll be there." I hung up the phone, picked up the now bulging manila folder, and slid it carefully into my handbag. The Gilded Spoon was a sea of low lighting and hushed whispers. The clinking of silver on porcelain was the only sharp sound. It was exactly as I remembered. And just as I'd predicted, it wasn't just us. My mother and father sat on one side of the booth. Next to my mother, my brother Liam. Across from them, my aunt and uncle, her loyal lieutenants. It wasn't a dinner. It was an intervention. I slid into the booth opposite them, placing my handbag on the empty seat beside me. 4 pairs of eyes were fixed on me. My father, the designated peacemaker, cleared his throat and began. "Emily, thank you for coming," he said, forcing a warm smile. "We've all just been so worried about you. This whole house thing. It's just not you." My mother nodded, her face a perfect mask of concern. "He's right, sweetheart. You've always been so sensible with money. We think you're under an enormous amount of stress. We want to help you fix this mistake." She leaned forward, her voice dropping. "We think you should sell the house, get your money back, and let us help you manage it properly." Liam leaned forward too, his eyes gleaming. "Yeah, Em. Mom and Dad can help you invest it. I'm looking for a house too, you know. Maybe that money could be a down payment for the whole family." The audacity of it sucked the air from my lungs. They didn't want to help me. They wanted my bonus. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply reached into my handbag, took out the manila folder, and placed it on the table between us. The soft thud silenced them. "I appreciate the concern," I said, my voice unnervingly steady. "But I'm fine. And my investment is sound. You've always taught me to be financially responsible after all." My mother let out a small, sharp scoff. "And we've always helped you. We have always been generous with both of our children, equally." I met her gaze. "You have," I agreed softly. "Like when Liam needed a new car a couple of years ago. Dad, you told me you just co-signed the loan." But you actually gave him $5,000 for the down payment, didn't you? My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. That was a family loan, Emily. A loan? I reached into the folder and slid the first crisp, white document across the table. It was the bank statement. This is the transfer from your account to his. The memo line reads, Liam car down payment. A gift. I'm not angry about it, I said, my eyes locking on his. I just want us to be honest with each other. My uncle cleared his throat loudly. Liam stared at the piece of paper as if it were a snake, his face turning pale. My mother recovered instantly, her voice high and brittle. We paid for plenty of things for you, too. Your lovely sweet 16 party. It was my graduation party, I corrected gently. And it was lovely. But Grandma paid for it. The second document slid out of the folder, coming to rest beside the first. The restaurant invoice. You told me you were tight on money that month. And I understood. But you didn't pay for it. She did. I looked around the table. Again, I just believe the truth is important. My aunt, who was raising a glass of wine to her lips, froze. At the next table, a couple fell silent, their eyes flicking toward us. The air was growing thick. My mother's face was a thundercloud. She had one card left to play, utter humiliation. This is ridiculous, she hissed, her voice a low, vicious whisper that cut through the restaurant's murmur. You've always been this way. Difficult. You almost ruined your brother's wedding, complaining endlessly about the cost of the venue. So ungrateful, after everything we did to give him a perfect day. There it was, the lie she had held over my head for years. I looked directly at her, and I said nothing. I let the silence stretch, a tactic my therapist had taught me. I let her ugly words hang in the air. I let my father, my aunt, my uncle, and my brother all sit with the weight of her accusation. The quiet at our table was so profound that even the waiter, approaching with a water pitcher, stopped in his tracks. Then, slowly, deliberately, I reached into the folder one last time. I pulled out a multi-page stapled document. A contract. I wasn't complaining about the cost, I said, my voice perfectly calm, perfectly professional. I was negotiating it. It's what I do for a living, remember? I turned the contract to the third page and slid it across the table to my father, my finger pointing to a paragraph highlighted in bright yellow. This is Clause 7B, the off-season booking rider. I found it in the venue's corporate events policy, and I convinced the manager to apply it to a private event like a wedding. It saved you 20% on the entire booking. I lifted my eyes to meet my mother's. It saved you $10,400. Money you then used to upgrade Liam's honeymoon to an oceanfront suite in Hawaii. The table was completely, utterly silent. My father stared at the highlighted clause as if he couldn't read the words. Liam looked like he'd been physically struck. My mother just stared at me. Her mask of maternal concern was gone, shattered. In its place was the face of a stranger, blank with pure, unfiltered shock. She had been exposed, not by a screaming match, but by a piece of paper. I calmly gathered my documents one by one and slid them back into the folder. I stood up. I'm done, I said, not to them, but to myself. I took the keys to my old apartment out of my purse and placed them gently on the table. The HOA issue has been resolved, by the way, I added. You can handle the final walkthrough. Then I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. And the feeling in my chest wasn't anger, and it wasn't victory. It was peace. I never heard how that dinner ended. I blocked their numbers before I even reached my car. One by one. Mom, Dad, Liam, my aunt, my uncle. A quiet little massacre of my contact list. The next few weeks were a blur of painting walls, unpacking boxes, and just breathing. The air by the lake was different. It didn't smell like traffic and concrete. It smelled like pine needles and damp earth. I started waking up to the sound of birds instead of sirens. I drank my morning coffee on the dock, watching the mist burn off the water. Then, my career took off. The municipal library pitch I'd been leading? We won the contract. An email landed in my inbox from my boss, Mr. Davison. He'd sent it to the entire firm. It said, "Special congratulations to Emily for her sharp negotiating skills and flawless presentation." Sharp negotiating skills. The very thing my mother had called being difficult. It was the recognition I had spent my entire life craving from my family, and here it was, given freely in a world where my work actually mattered. 2 months after I moved in, I had a small housewarming. It wasn't a party, it was a dinner. Carol, the real estate agent who had become a friend, brought a bottle of expensive champagne. My 2 best friends from work drove up from the city. My new neighbor, a sweet woman in her 70s, brought a freshly baked apple pie. We sat around the crackling fire in my new living room. We ate. We laughed. No one was performing. No one was keeping score. My friend raised her glass. To Emily, she said, her eyes shining in the firelight, and to her beautiful new home. You built this. She was right. I looked around the room at the warm light, at the genuine smiles on the faces of my friends. Through the window, the moon was rising over the lake. This was a foundation. This was a home. It wasn't built on guilt or obligation. It was built on a bonus I had earned, and a boundary I had finally set. My family is still out there, somewhere. I'm sure they're telling their own version of this story, with me as the villain. But their voices are faint now. They're just whispers lost in the wind across the water. The silence I have in my life now isn't empty. It's peaceful. So if you're out there feeling invisible, waiting for someone else to celebrate you, I'm telling you to stop waiting. Your value isn't determined by who shows up for your birthday. It's determined by you showing up for yourself. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is buy your own cake, light your own candle, and build your own damn house. What's a boundary you've been afraid to set? Let me know in the comments below.